So, welcome
Akil,
to...
my mic works.
Yes, it does.
You flip the
It's
second
no
of the
longer-
2 buttons.
I know. It's no
Please
longer
tell the
just a
audience.
display.
For those of you who don't know, that mic was just a prop for the last 4 episodes.
Now you can hear me better.
Welcome to our first episode where everyone's microphone is working.
Careful. This is our first episode with a guest, and her mic might not work. So episode 5, titled
Yes.
Let's Talk Abuse.
I have a question.
What's up?
Yes.
How do you guys spell Oregano? Wait, not spell. How do you pronounce?
Oregano? Like the
Oregano?
spice?
Yeah, oregano.
Don't say oregano. If you say oregano.
Oregano. No, but a lot of the dishes do that. They have the oil of oregano. They call oil of oregano, right? A lot of people do that, though.
It's a British thing too. British people say oregano instead of oregano.
Why did you bring this up today?
That's
What
it.
happened?
We're not discussing this
Okay.
Conversation.
Sure.
Moving on.
Sure.
Eid Mubarak, everyone. This episode comes out the night,
After
the
Eid.
day after Eid, before Eid?
Before Eid, the day before
The
Eid.
day before Eid. Tonight is
So-
Eid if you're listening to this when it comes out.
Chandrat
Eid
Mubarak, I guess.
Chandrat
and Eid
Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak. I hope everyone had a very fulfilling Ramadan.
Was that for us?
No, that was for
Yeah.
everyone. That was for
That
the
was for
audience.
everyone. Okay, cool.
That's
So,
for the audience. I hope whatever you
is-
set out to do this Ramadan
Yeah.
actually happened and that you have the strength to continue your life.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Some of our previous episode was a little darker in tone, and this episode will be a little darker in tone.
Mhm.
So, letting everybody know that we will be talking about abuse. And Aka, would you like to take it away? You got a little.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you had a little blurb, bro. I lost.
I had a
it.
little blurb, yeah. So in this episode, we are going to be talking about relationship abuse, about domestic abuse. Our guest is an attorney for domestic abuse, but nothing in this podcast is going to be legal advice, relationship advice, aside from just like general talking about it. So if this is something that affects you or someone that you know, or the stuff that we talk about sounds a little bit too familiar, we will have links down below for the domestic abuse hotline in the States or in Canada. Please seek professional help. Friends and family for these kind of things just won't cut it, so seek professional help if you can.
Zane, introduce abuse.
Introducing abuse. So, my work previously as a chaplain, as a hospital chaplain, we were trained in different forms of abuse, and a lot of them, while there are many types of abuse, some are more obvious than others, right? So we have physical abuse, which I think is very obvious for people to pick up, and then we have emotional, economical, spiritual abuse, and all these the signs are hard to read. So one of the reasons we want to do this episode, a lot of our episodes about living life, dating, marriage life, etc. I do believe it was important to have an episode about the signs of abuse, the different types of abuse and their signs, right? And how we could support ourselves and others.
Okay, let's bring in our guest and I will introduce her. Hi, Kinza.
Hi, assalamu alaikum,
Wa
everyone.
Alaikum salam.
Okay, so our intention with today's Eid special is to bring awareness as well as support for the struggles that one can face during and after their experience with abuse. We have a special guest today to dive more into this topic, and our main message that we would love to leave you with is we encourage you to seek professional help to support outside of your loved ones if you feel like you are currently experiencing any signs of domestic violence and abuse. All right, Kinza Khan, Chicago-raised attorney who works in the fields of domestic violence and sexual assault, especially within the Muslim community. She also works with some immigration, civil, and human rights. She's passionate about traveling, reading, and photography, which is what she does to keep herself sane as forms of self-care, period. Gen Z.
Welcome to the podcast, Kinza.
Welcome to the
It's good to have
podcast.
you here.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Mhm. So just to get started, I want to ask open-ended question. Since this is our Eid episode, what has brought the most joy to you, to your heart this Ramadan so far?
So I really like Tarawih. I like listening to the Quran. I think for me, that's one of those things that really helps it feel like it's Ramadan. And then talking to friends who are talking about like their goals in Ramadan and just feeling like part of a community, like everyone's kind of, trying to better themselves in Ramadan, whatever that may mean for them.
For sure. I like that.
So this is a local chai question, and you are our first guest, so we have to start with this. Tell us where in Chicago you can find the best cup of chai, because we know in North Carolina, it's my house, but...
I do have a couple of friends who make amazing chai. And they're like the chai walas, like in our group of friends. Mm-hmm. But in a public place, we just got Kawa House, and we got another place. I forgot the name of the other one, but there's a couple like public cafes, restaurants, whatever, that have really good chai. I mean, Adani chai is amazing. It's also just like Karak chai, so I might be biased. But Kawa House chai is pretty good. I don't think it's overrated.
Is it better than Tim Hortons?
Yeah. Tim Hortons is overrated. Unpopular opinion. Tim Hortons, I tried to like it. I couldn't.
Thank you, Kinza. Thank you for affirming my beliefs.
I don't know what the conversation is before I got here, so I don't know whose side I just took. But.
No, you're right. Zane's a huge fan of Tim Hortons, but I live in Canada and I have it almost every day. And you're right, it is overrated.
Canada's what do you call it? What do I always call it? I forgot what I called it. Finance establishment.
For us Americans, I think Tim Hortons is like a cool, like when I went to Canada the first few times, like I'd go to Michigan or like, Toronto, I would get Tim Hortons because it's like a Canada thing or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, I tried. Wait, Zane, where do you live?
I live where Kiki lives. I live in North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not in Canada, so maybe that's why you like it.
Well, the first time I had it wasn't. Wow. The first time I had it was when I lived in New York. We only had two. Mm-hmm. And my friend, the day I was graduating college, the day he took me to Tim Hortons, and it was the best coffee I ever had. Right? I was like, wow.
Graduating college.
Yeah.
This is an association thing there.
Yeah. Oh, really? It was the last day of college. It wasn't like I had it in college, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's why. It's like a celebratory memory. It's associated with the drink.
Sure. I mean, I guess.
Like if you had anything that day, you might have liked it. I don't know.
Well, I really liked it. And then years later, I went to Dubai. And that was 3 years ago I went to Dubai. And they had a Tim Hortons. I'm like, yo, I'm ordering this. And I literally DoorDashed it to my house every day in Dubai. Like, I'm like, this is They do.
Yeah, there's one in the mall.
There's one in the mall right outside the Wells, right there. In the last 5 years, what belief, behavior, or habit improved your life the most?
The last 5 years, belief. Wow, that's a deep question. Belief, behavior, or habit. Therapy, I recommend for everybody. That's probably helped a lot with everything. And yeah, I mean, I could go on, but I feel like that's the quicker.
Everyone go to therapy.
Therapy is good for you.
The social media advice of the decade: just go to therapy.
But not social media therapy, like real therapy. Because social media therapy, I have my thoughts on.
So we need to. I've said that plenty of times. We need to do an episode of that.
Can I join that episode?
Yes, absolutely.
I lose my mind once a day.
Thank you. Okay, we have already invited our first guest back on live. Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, discussion question for everyone. What is a common form of abuse that is overlooked or not talked about enough? In my opinion, I think it's emotional abuse.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
So what I would say, and this could be a bias because of previous works I've done, because I've noticed spiritual abuse so much because I was trained in that. And so it's a bias because I see it the most, right? Mm-hmm. But also there's recently I know a lot of men are joking about the situation with that Moroccan soccer player, which I cannot remember his name right now, where his wife filed for divorce and she did not get any type of money because he moved all his assets and money to his mom's name. All his bank accounts, all of his assets was under his mom's name. And that was premeditated. He didn't do that while they were, in the separation process. He did that years ago, right? So that, I believe, is a form of abuse. I don't know what I would categorize that as, but that's common. And like, if you look at right now in social media, people are making a joke about that, right? And I don't think it's something to joke about.
Mm-hmm. I think that's financial abuse. That's a category of abuse, right?
Yeah. I would call that financial abuse. And this is really common, unfortunately.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. Well, with that, Kinza, what do you think?
Yeah, I had a lot of cases in which I would represent victims of abuse who would be in that situation, would have endured financial abuse because like moving money or like, even buying a house in somebody else's name, like your mom's name or a sibling's name or something like that. I get the intention might be stated to be like, to protect your assets, but there's better ways to do that than this way. I think emotional abuse, like you said, is also really underdiagnosed, I would say, because the thing is people don't know like that they're in the situation because of the emotional abuse. So ironically, the psychological and emotional abuse makes you think that you're going crazy, like gaslighting. And then, when you're, by the time you realize it, it's already happened. It's already started happening, right? And it's probably been a while. Verbal abuse, I think. So my own opinion is that emotional abuse is present in every other kind of abuse. Like when there's physical abuse, when there's financial abuse, when there's another kind of abuse, there's always emotional abuse with it or psychological abuse with it, because that often couples it in a way to make the person stay in the relationship. So sometimes the abuser will be telling someone that, or giving off an impression that they like deserve this, or that is all in their head, or that they, are overreacting and that it's not how they think it is and whatever it may be. And that's emotional abuse. And usually that's, to keep them in, it's power and control. Abuse is power and control. It's about power and control. So it's a way to keep them, having less power and being controlled.
Like that, keeping them hooked, kind of, almost in a way.
It's keeping the power over them, keeping them hooked so that they could stay in there, so that the person could still exercise power over them.
Yeah. One of the scariest things that I learned about when learning abuse is like early on, the abuser makes the other person sort of rely on them. And so that they don't have anywhere else to turn, like they're isolating them from their friends and family. That's part of it. And they basically make it so that you need the abuser so that you can't recognize the abuse, or when you do, you can't really do anything about it. So how do you recognize that if you're in that situation?
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's so subtle. Like the way you said it, like listening to it, I'm like, oh yeah, like obviously, like we would totally recognize that when it happens, but it's so subtle. And people who abuse can be very smart, they can be very intelligent. And so there's a way to do it that makes it very, it makes it very manipulative and very effective. And it's not always that clean. It's not always like isolation until, let's say, after someone even gets married, and then all of a sudden they're not able to hang out with their family members as much, or whatever it may be. Some red flags are like noticing control. So certain things that in society we think are like cute are actually like a form of power and control. So, location sharing, like an expectation of location sharing, not for safety reasons, but for like jealousy reasons, right? That might be, and I'm not saying location sharing is abusive. It's totally fine if there's trust between two people, and that's totally fine. But if it's like an expectation or demand to share someone's location just so that someone can know what they're doing all the time, it could be abusive. So certain things that in society we've seen as like, oh, that's cute, they want to like they're overprotective, or they want to, overprotectiveness could also be a form of control. But there's certain things that we think are like, oh, they'll get jealous if they see me talk to someone else. Jealousy, there's a fine line between like a normal amount, healthy amount versus being controlling.
Mm-hmm.
And so noticing things like that happening early in the relationship, usually those are common red flags that can lead to things getting worse after marriage or after there's some sort of commitment. And so some of the things you're talking about, like isolating somebody, it doesn't happen right away. Like people, one of the most surprising things that I've learned about abuse is that like the victims of abuse they're not dumb. Like they're very smart. Like anyone is susceptible. Anyone. Some of my clients have been like really, really smart, educated, like CEO boss woman. Like they haven't been like, we have this like stereotype of abuse in our minds. We have this like vulnerable, susceptible victim of abuse kind of image. And that's not what the case is at all. And so that just shows how powerful it is and how like sneaky it is, how manipulative it is.
So if it's so sneaky, it is sneaky. So what are some signs that friends could look for in their friend? Like if you are concerned about a friend, what are some signs to look for to see what's happening?
Yeah. That's a great question. So when you ask the friend, if the friend is talking to you differently when she's around, so I had a friend like this, I'm thinking about that experience. If she's talking to you differently when she is with the guy, in this case, it was the guy she was dating at the time who was the abuser, when she's with him versus not with him, that's a huge thing to notice. I remember we had dinner together and he like held her hand constantly throughout the dinner, but it was like a group dinner. And at the time, I mean, it was kind of like strange, but at the time, I think they were trying to play it off like this is just so cute, but it was like weird. And so noticing, like trusting your instinct. Oh my God, people need to trust their instinct more. If you're friends with someone, you know them really well. Let's assume you know this friend really well. If internally they are, like if they're acting kind of different, then pay attention to that. If they suddenly can't hang out ever, like I know some people do end up like seeing their friends less when they have a partner, but if it's a very blatant move or they have to keep these lives separate, their friends from their partner, then that's something to notice. In Muslim communities, it's a little bit harder, right? Because people are hiding their dating relationships and stuff sometimes. So it's a little bit tricky there to notice that, but it is something to pay attention to. If there are, if you can't get a hold of them, and something my friends and I do still, even if even though we're older and, whatever, is we share our own location with our girlfriends. So like if one of my friends is going to a different city to meet the guy that she's been dating, even though it's been a few months, I'll be like, just share your location with me the whole time. Just safety things or whatever, especially if their parents don't know their location. If their parents don't know that they're there, then be the friend who they can and that's okay. Like that happens. Right. And let's be real. So, you might want to offer that, and also not being judgmental. Like I've had a couple friends who told me I've been in an abusive relationship for the last couple of years, but I don't want to tell you earlier because I knew you would tell me to leave. And I wasn't ready to leave the relationship. And it's okay. Like this is part of the process, right? So just don't ever be the person who's like, I told you so. Don't ever be the judgmental person who's like, why did you do that? Because they're already doing that to themselves. Like when someone just realizes they're in an abusive relationship, after the fact, it's very isolating because they are often judging themselves. They're often like, why didn't I leave? Why did I stay? Like these are very common, things. So, and there's reasons why they didn't leave. And if it was us, we don't know if we would have left either, because the way the psychological abuse has happened to keep them there was part of the problem, right?
I just want to make a good point with that. And this for the parents, I always have to put something in the parent side, especially fathers. And when I worked at the hospital, we had to talk about this to a lot of fathers. where their daughters were in an abusive relationship with a boyfriend or husband or whatever, and the father will take her in because she left him, and then she will continuously keep going back to her partner, right? And then the father, I guess he got fed up and out of frustration, he said, if you go with him this time, don't come back. And we had to pull him aside, be like, no, that's the wrong way to go about it. Because she needs that support, and that she knows that she could always depend on her father to come back to, right? Because yes, if she goes back to her abusive ex or abusive partner 99 times, it may be that 100th time where she finally ends it completely and she needs someone to go back to. But it's a lot harder for her to leave that situation if she doesn't have someone to support her after that situation. So a lot of fathers, I've had to have that conversation with a lot of fathers, and I would like to share that on this podcast. So please don't do that. Don't give that ultimatum to your daughters, or even your sons if they're going through it or whatever.
And it's a hard position to be in, because I could also empathize with the fathers too. I could see how it's hard you don't want to enable someone either, right? Yeah. And so to be like, oh yeah, just go ahead and be abused, and then I'll then you can come back here. I think fathers, not to justify that behavior. Like, I agree with you. I don't think they should, that they should ever close off that door, but at the same time, I think, for a father, I feel like they blame themselves a lot for when their kids are in a bad situation like that. And so that's their own thing. That's their own issue, struggle, whatever, that they should be dealing with, so that they can also be able to hold that space for themselves, and also take care of their, daughter in this case, the way that their daughter would need to in order to stay safe.
Mm-hmm. So Zane or Kinza, where does that insecurity kind of come from on the part of the father? Have you talked to people about that?
I didn't even know what Kinza just said. When I was serving as chaplain, that didn't even come to mind, because I was more focused on handling. Chaplains are more like the emergency department, right? Like all that, like specialty work, like you have to go. Like I'm in the trauma room, right? Like that other stuff, like I'm not qualified for, right? So I never actually thought about it. And even if I did know it, I don't think I would have dug that deep, because know your lane. We were talking about online therapy earlier. People need to know their lane. So if someone has like an addiction, or they're alcoholic, right? I help the initial, but then I need to send them to the proper resource, right? So I didn't think about that. And if I knew about it, I would probably just send them to the proper resource, proper therapy and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also am not I'm not a therapist, right? So I do tell, in that case, when I've had people who are family members, and I can see that they're bringing in their own issues into the situation, that is their sibling or their cousin or their daughter or whatever, then I also advise, counseling for everyone involved, because of course it affects everybody. It's not going to not faze you if you see someone you love going through that, right? So some sort of counseling, with someone who's qualified, I always recommend. But to answer your question, where does that come from? I think, the thing is, I think we can understand without excusing the behavior. I think we can understand the father's behavior, the parent's behavior, and we can assume goodwill of them. We can realize that this is coming from a place of protectiveness. They don't want to enable their kid. They don't want the child to keep going back to a bad situation. I'm not a father, but fathers, their love and protection of their daughters, right, can be a way in, it can be so strong that you don't want to see your child with someone else who's going to harm her, obviously, right? So assuming that good intention, but still not excusing the behavior, maybe that's not the way the daughter needs to be taken care of, right? And this is just a general thing with parenting, I think. Understanding that parents have their own stuff that they're going through, and that they've gone through, right? A lot of our immigrant parents have trauma and stuff that we don't even know. there's intergenerational trauma, there's just so much, right? And so understanding that they may have good intention, but there's intent and there's impact. And this is something with community organizing that we talk about a lot. And so I try to apply it to like, individual relationships too. So I think understanding that maybe that father has good intention, right? Even if you assume goodwill, but the impact might not be what the daughter needs in this case. And in these cases, I'm sure as chaplain, Zane, you've probably run into this too. As an advocate for victims, I've run into this too, where different people want different things. So I've asked, like the victims of abuse, like, what do you want in this case? Like, what does it look like for you to be supported? Because some people don't want their family to be involved. Some people do want their family to be supporting and involved. Some people's parents' involvement makes it worse, and for some people it makes it better. So we have to respect, like, that person knows their family best. That person knows what they need the best. And sometimes when we go into an advocacy role, even like police officers fall into this, medical professionals, like, a lot of people fall into this, where sometimes we start thinking that we might know what's best for that person, but we don't. Like, so even when I advise on, I don't tell my clients call the police, because actually it might not be the best thing for them, right? It might make the situation worse, not better. Some of the abusers are scared when they call the police, and they actually like straighten out, and their abuse kind of decreases. But some get even more riled up. Some get even more abusive, and so I'm not going to know how that person's going to react. The client will know. The person, the victim, the survivor, the person who's gone through it, who knows that person really well, they'll know how that person will react. So it has to be on them how they choose to determine family involvement, police involvement, legal system involvement, counseling even. Is there a chance that the person might find out she's going to counseling? How does she protect herself from that, right? Things like that.
So like victim-led intervention is what you're...
Yeah, always. Survivor-centric, that's what the term is, survivor-centric. Or victim-centric, yeah.
Kiki, do you have... Yeah. You've been quiet.
Yeah. I think even as a coach, I've had to, like, even with my clients, you can see the abuse with some people and they just don't know what they're going through. And the most common thing I've seen, especially with relationships, is the love bombing that kind of gets them like to rely on their partner for all of that attention, affection. And I think that's, like, in my eyes, one of the first things that kind of starts the cycle. I don't know if you agree or not, but yeah, I think that's like, I've seen that a lot, even with myself, actually, that it's the love bombing that kind of starts the other things. And it's not until after you get out of it that you finally like reflect back on what went down. And you're like, oh, this is like, even though I'm like always telling other people like, oh, like this is abuse and this is this. It's like I'm going through the same things, but I can't even see it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. We are so much better at other people than we are at ourselves. I give such great relationship advice, but sometimes my friends are like, girl, you need to hear your own advice sometimes.
That's what this podcast is for.
Yeah.
Great. No.
That's one of the reasons,
yes. So I think what you're saying is so true. I think the best way I've learned through... this is actually a therapy tactic I've learned in a mediation training that I've taken as a lawyer, but it's a therapy tactic that they do and it's a skill that they learn, which is to ask questions, not tell the person. So to just get them thinking about what it could be. And you yourself be also open-minded and ask, like, it's the whole be curious, not judgmental, ask out of curiosity, right? Don't tell them. So, if someone is going through some love bombing, right, and we notice that, I think it's really easy for people to get defensive. Like, if I was like, you're being love bombed, you're being totally abused. One, I may be wrong, right? Two, that person might get really defensive because now I'm judging their choices, a choice that they're in a relationship, right? And again, I may be wrong. So the most effective way I could see in that situation is being like, hey, do you think that, like, or just asking like, hey, do you think that, like, this is like the normal level of excitement in the beginning of a relationship, or do you think he's kind of like overdoing some of the stuff from here? Just have them thinking about it, right? Because the goal is not to be right when you're a supportive friend. The goal is to implant the idea in their mind so that they can just keep thinking about it. And then later, if someone else asks that, or if they notice something, that question is already in their mind. Your job is done. Right. And then just be supportive. Like, so if I notice that someone's being isolated, I'm like, hey, like, do you want to spend more time with your friends than you are? You know, if I notice that they're not spending as much time with their friends because they're in a new relationship. And I've had friends who are like, no, like, I'm so obsessed with this person that I just want to be, you know, and they're like, we can spend time with friends together, me and that person. And then I'm like, okay, that's not like, that's not her being controlled or isolated. But when they say something like, oh, my partner doesn't like it when I go out with my friends, you know, I'll be like, oh, why not? You know, don't judge, like, just don't judge them. Just asking from a place of love and like care. It comes off different, even if only we know the place that we're asking from. It just, the whole tone changes, the person's perception of it, and, you know, receiving of it changes. And just being like supportive in that way. And then that way later they can always come to you too. It is hard to do. It's a skill that sometimes we just know. And here's the other thing. Some people respond better to tough love, and some people need the softer, you know. And with some people, when they ask me, when they come to me and tell me something, I ask, do you want me to listen or do you want advice? Do you want my opinion or do you want me to listen? And that's something I learned recently, because I used to just give my advice and opinion about everything. And so that's how I like to receive it. But now I even sometimes when I say something, I tell them, I want you to only listen, or I want your advice, right? So both ways, we're giving the information or receiving the information. And then when it creates a safe space, it creates honesty and trust. And then when the person does tell you, so with my cousin, we're very close. And I actually, with her, gave the advice. I gave the tough love. I was like, girl, you need to leave this. Like, you know, you already know you need to leave it. And then later I felt like maybe that was too strong. So I told her, hey, listen, like, I hope that wasn't too strong. Like, because with a friend, I wouldn't do it like that. With this cousin, we're just so close, and I did. And she was like, I needed that because everyone else has been so soft with me. And I needed I needed that level of like directness. And actually, I did get that from you. And I was actually pleasantly surprised, you know? And so the relationship matters too. And then that person, are they ready to receive that? And how is everyone else acting? Are they walking around the bush? Are they being really soft because they don't want to come off too direct? And then you can always ask, just like we asked, you know, do you want listening or do you want advice? You can always ask the person, do you want me to be like, do you want my real honest opinion? It might hurt, just a warning. Or do you want me to like be gentle with you? You know, and then that also gives a responsibility to the person to be aware of their own state. So I think it's good, because then they can't just like blame you, you know, fully for their own state.
Right. Yeah. And I think for me, the biggest thing that I have always appreciated is the honest feedback while I'm in something, or even after, like, where from a friend that stays consistent. It's like, oh, I don't like this person, and you need to be careful. And like, even at the end, it's like, yeah, I'm happy you're out, and I'm glad you know, were careful. And like, it's not like just, okay, if you're happy, I'll be happy, even though, you know, I can see this. And it's like, you know, just letting someone go through something just for the sake of like, I want to keep my friendship with you clean, and like, you know, not kind of tiptoe around it and walk over eggshells. So I want to lead into a question more related to the work you do. What connects your heart to the work that you are currently doing?
I think, there's just a need in our community, and there's a lack of access to resources because of many reasons, but even language barriers sometimes, when there's like, you know, when certain victims of violence don't speak English and stuff like that. Also, growing up, like, we don't talk about this stuff in our communities. Like, we don't talk about, for example, with sexual assault, with these cases, like teenagers, right? Let's say Muslim or they see teenagers are taught, don't date. So what happens if they do date, and then they've never been taught about consent? They've never been taught about how to date safely, right? And it's almost like there's such a need for conversation, you know, about these things. that I think growing up and not seeing our communities avoid these topics and deny the fact that domestic violence even exists, and then can create so many problems, right? It can create an enabling of the problem. It can create cycles because there's no intervention to break the cycle, and domestic violence is a cycle often. And so I think we need to start addressing it early. We need to start like talking about these things. We need to start not blaming victims for the situations that they are in because of the abuser who's, the one who's done the wrong here. So I think we need to start doing these and just seeing the community. Like growing up in Chicago, we have a huge Muslim community here, many Muslim communities, I should say. And I think I started working in my parents are both psychologists too. And they've also been always serving people. So I think it comes from that too. So I learned about the value of like serving other people, especially other Muslim people. And you're, kind of starting with your own family and then your own community. And then that's how you change the world. I learned that from them, alhamdulillah. And I think that going into in law school, I started working with domestic violence victims, saw a lot of people who spoke Urdu. So I started representing them or advocating for them, I should say. And then later, kind of just the need was always there. So I just kept doing it. And I wish we had more people because it's too much for just a few of us, in Chicago who are lawyers who are female and also Muslim and also speak Urdu or understand Urdu who can help. Like there's just such a need. There's such a need. And I can't even help all the people I wish I could. And there are just so many people who have questions or misinformation. Misinformation is a huge problem. And Zain, that relates to your point about spiritual abuse. Spiritual abuse and domestic violence are very often intersected. And it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And so in recent years, seeing clients that came to me that were like, oh yeah, I would go to the masjid and the imam said this, or this imam told me to not expose my partner's sins. And this imam told me that I shouldn't get divorced unless the abuser agrees to the divorce. Like, I just get so angry. And I think so. Yeah. I think my anger also fuels me. I'm trying to make it like love is fueling me, but sometimes it's both.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to ask you a question about spiritual abuse because what you're saying, like, there's so few of you that speak Urdu, are women, do have the expertise. But then there's also another thing, not just culture, but religiously, a lot of there's debates on social media today that just last week that saying Islam doesn't recognize marital rape, right? Which is ridiculous and crazy, right? To think
incorrect.
About that.
Yeah. Marital rape is
it's definitely a thing. It's a thing in Islam, right? It's a thing in fiqh. It exists.
And it's not allowed. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not allowed, right? But there's literally people, and this is why I hate all social media content creators, especially of the Muslim variety, is like they're literally having this debate and saying, no, you can't find any evidence for it. And there's similar things like that where they start using Islam as a means to justify their abuse. And then if someone doesn't have that, the academic Islamic vernacular to come back, well, they're stuck. They're like, do I reach out to these resources, or are these resources liberal and hence I shouldn't reach out and are misguiding me, right? Which then leads to my question is, can you tell us about your work with Heart to Grow and how can people get involved with Heart to Grow?
Yes, I was thinking about them because I'm an independent contractor at Heart to Grow. So I'm on their team. They have a board, a staff, and a team. The board is obviously just the board, like with any nonprofit. Their staff is pretty small, but around the U.S., it's a nationwide nonprofit organization. And then their team is people who just work with them. I'm the attorney on the team. They have mental health professionals. They have medical folks, public health folks. They're a very good, awesome crew of people at Heart. And they also have an advisory board, and we have Islamic scholars on the advisory board. So the one thing I was going to say to anyone who is thinking like, oh, this organization has a reputation for being kind of liberal, or I don't know how much I can trust, go on their website. This information is supposed to be public. Go on their website or ask them about the advisory board. What resources do they have? Like are there any Islamic scholars or who, what's the credibility? What is the credibility of the people who are advising them on religious matters, and then search into, search those guys. Because we have like Heart, we have a lot of people that we consult with who have a lot of high, like, we're not claiming to be religious scholars ourselves or anything like that. There is a team that is advising us. There is a team that's proofreading books, research, articles, everything that comes out by Heart. And so Heart is an organization that works and focuses on not just domestic violence and sexual assault, but also sexual health, because it's also something we haven't talked about growing up in our communities. And so it focuses on advocating for victims and also educating people about all those topics. And also, they do a lot of research. They recently had some amazing research being done about the different answers that Muslim men versus Muslim women who are in college age gave about a bunch of questions regarding victim blaming, regarding the woman's level of responsibility if she got assaulted. And the difference was stark, and it was so disappointing and so scary. And but this is the research that we need in order to see what the issues are, in order to like work on these issues. So the website, I think it's hearttogrow.org. They have my favorite part of the website is, well, there's two parts. One is their resources. They have a resources tab, and in the resources tab, they have like external resources. They have a power and control wheel for Muslim people. And in that, there's a whole section on spiritual abuse and how it can show up in relationships that have domestic violence in them. They also have a book that just came out. I have it here somewhere. It's called The Sex Talk, and it's amazing. And there's hadiths in there, like the Sex Talk book. There's all this like Islamic context, and there's hadiths in there. There's stories that are very verified. They have all the resources. They have their whole team's information, like everyone that consulted with in writing that book. They have all of that information there too, so anyone can see their resources. It took 7 years to write. It's so needed. A couple friends of mine borrowed my version, and they're people who can have conversations like this. They're not totally sheltered from having these kinds of conversations, and they were still learning a lot of new things, and love that book. And so I do recommend it. They also have another part of the website is there's ask someone a question. There's a form, which I think it's called ask a virtual educator. I'm one of the virtual educators. There's two of us attorneys on the virtual educator. Her name's Aisha Rahman and myself, Kinza Khan. We're the two attorneys who people can ask legal questions to. We've both studied Islamic law. We've both studied family law. We've both studied issues of mahar, other Islamic issues that come up with these cases. And then there are people on there. There's a guy who is a virtual educator. If someone wants to ask a male a question, there is a public health person, a mental health person. So people can see our bios when they go to fill out the Ask a Virtual Educator form. And if they want, they can pick who they want to ask the question to. This is all free. This all gets forwarded to us. People have asked really cool questions on there, really interesting things. People have also scheduled a legal consult with me on the phone. And they can do that with me or with Aisha on the phone if they have any questions. Now, I live in Illinois. Aisha lives in Georgia. Illinois family law is slightly different. So, like, it's obviously better when you are in the same state that you're asking the question, about. But if you know me and you don't want to ask me because you already know me through mutual friends or something, then ask Aisha. And that's everything. I don't know who Aisha's talked to, and she doesn't know who I've talked to. Everything's confidential. Everything in the whole organization is treated with very survivor-centric. It's a very survivor-centric model. So confidentiality, attorney-client privilege, which is our version of that, and then having just a very focused method on survivor care. We do safety planning on the phone as well. So some people have talked to me on the phone about like some people don't even know if it's abuse or not. They're just on the phone with me and we talk about it and we look at what's going on. They don't know their options. You don't have to be ready to take a legal step in order to have a conversation with an attorney on the phone about these cases. Like, that's a common misconception. People are like, well, I'm not ready to file for divorce. That's totally fine. But at least you know what your options are. Like, let's say you never exercise that option, no problem, but you're empowered when you have education about your rights. So that's also a part of their website. They can reach out to me via the website that way, or to anyone else. There's we get all sorts of questions. Like, we've really heard everything. So no questions really like off limits.
That's awesome. And we'll put those resources in the description as well. No jumping to conclusions here. If you're in a situation, definitely reach out to the professionals.
We'll also have, at least for Calgary and North Carolina, we'll have the links on the
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
And Heart to Grow has the national hotlines as well.
Okay.
They do, but like sometimes state specific, city specific is harder to get. So that's great that you guys have.
I always advocate to my friends that if you do care about people, always know your local resources. That's like, so for me, I know where the shelters are. I know about Interactive Wake, which is advocacy organization here in North Carolina. Know where Ronald McDonald House is awesome. So know where they're at. So people who are listening don't necessarily have to look at an overall national organization, but there are resources there, and just have a list and phone numbers. If your friend needs it and you don't know what to do, you could slide it to them. Right. So that's
There's also, a lot of cities during COVID especially started creating like online lists as well. So these are really, if you don't have the list, you can just probably very easily find one. Just looking up, for example, legal aid, free legal aid, and put the city, legal aid resources, organizations, nonprofits, whatever, put in the city. And you could likely find, someone's already probably made this list, because during COVID, I know a lot of organizations were doing this.
Yeah. Also, I would like to point out, when this is something really cool on the Heart to Grow website, where your banner is static. So even if you scroll through the pages, the banner is still up. And on the banner, you have the escape button. So when you're looking up resources wherever you are on the page, if someone walks in on you and you do not want them to see it for whatever reason, you could click that escape button and it'll go to Google or wherever your homepage is for your browser. So I think,
for me, it took me to the Art Museum of Chicago.
Awesome. Okay. For me, it took me to Google. So this is excellent. So it's a good escape button. And the cool thing is, like, it's always on the top of the page. So you don't have to scroll up, because the banner is static, right? So you don't have to scroll up to get it. It's just there.
That's a cool thing to notice.
Yeah. Well, they do announce in the the website, but it was also kind of cool that the banner stayed there, because I'm a web developer by profession, so I was like, oh, it stays there. That's awesome.
Mine's not sticky. I have to scroll up. Mine's
not.
No,
mine's a sticky, bro.
Why is it?
Are you using Chrome or using Firefox, bro?
Who uses Firefox?
If I resize the window, it stops being sticky.
If you resize, it stops.
So if it's full screen, it's sticky. But if it's half screen, it's not sticky.
Okay.
So if you're looking for domestic abuse resources, full screen. Editing Akil here. The escape button in Heart to Grow takes a little bit of time to load. So when you visit the website, click escape first, let it load, then go back and look at the other resources. That way, if you need to click escape again in an emergency, the second time you click it, it'll be a lot faster.
Zane, do you use Firefox?
I use Chrome, but I've used Firefox for a long time, because I am a computer geek, and I use sources sometimes, books and whatnot, and I need my privacy protected. So Waterfox is the best, actually. Waterfox is So so
if you're looking for resources, use Firefox, use Waterfox, use the Onion browser. Just in case somebody is tracking your history and stuff like that. There's other ways to keep yourself safe.
Okay. Well, that was a great episode with a lot of information to take away as we go into Eid. This is where I show off my shirt. Is it Mugger yet? Okay.
Because it's still Ramadan at the point of recording.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us, Kinza. And we'll have you again on soon to talk about social media therapy.
Yes,
I was
please.
half kidding about that, but I'm happy to. No
That's a topic
pressure.
I would love to discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I discuss that all the time. I do want to thank anyone who's listened to this episode, because when we empower ourselves with knowledge like this, we are then able to respond to people in the community. Like I've had clients who have been able to identify what domestic violence is because of their own situation, and they then were able to pass on this information to their friends or their sister or their cousin, and that is really powerful. That's how we're going to start making a societal change. So even if it doesn't affect you personally, just knowing this information, you never know why God wants you to know this information. You never know why what you might need to do with this information and what service and love you can provide to other people with it.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this wonderful Eid episode of Local Chai. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
Bye.